Welcome. My name is René Spitz. I'm one of the members of the board of the IF Design Foundation, an educational foundation that is committed to scientific research and education in the context of design. I would like to introduce you to Annette Diefenthaler, also a member of the board of IF Design Foundation, and we will both guide you through this event in this morning. And we knew it was a little bit challenging due to the soccer championship context. And this is part of the project here. We as the Design Foundation, IF Design Foundation, believe that design education needs to evolve. And because this was a clear finding from our study we conducted from 2016 to 2021, and 2022 we published it in this white book, Designing Design Education. Designers and design educators from around the globe agreed that design education does not properly prepare graduates for the futures, and that it needs to undergo radical change. We published these findings. This white book is still available for free as a download. The printed copies are run out of print after half a year. But this book was just the starting point. And in order to catalyze an active change, we started a collaboration with our gracious host, Neue Sammlung. Over the course of 3 years, we are conducting here this series of workshops, exchanges, and symposia. And each of these events convenes a learning community of about 30 design educators and a select number of impulse speakers share inspiration. And the educators then workshop ideas for how to integrate these ideas into their teaching. And today is the conclusion of the fourth of such workshop events. The topic of the previous workshops and the forthcoming, they were all inspired by what we heard in our global research project. Interestingly, many design educators were not exactly so concerned with how to better teach graphic design, what software should be applied, what would be most relevant for specific techniques. But they were really curious about topics that typically do not show up in design education at all. How do we inspire students to learn? How do you encourage them? How do you teach them to be courageous, to courage? And what do we know about how people best learn in the first place? As a result, the first workshop in March last year focused on topics of teaching and learning sciences, such as experiential learning, growth mindset, and new ways to measure impact. The second workshop at the October focused on personal growth, such as resilience and emotional intelligence. And the third workshop in March focused on artificial intelligence.
And here we are again for the fourth time. One thing that's specifically exciting is that I see folks who've joined us now in the audience who were part of some of the last workshops. So we really have this growing learning community of folks who are hopefully taking what we discuss here back into their classrooms, into their seminars, into their projects in universities, but also in other contexts. What we spent the last day and a half on is the topic of responsible, value-based leadership and sustainability. I don't think that's surprising to any of you because these topics are ever present. Right? This is what the public conversation is about. This is what we hear all the time, how important that is. But what exactly does it mean to be a responsible leader? Right? how do we practice that? What does it mean to actually design with sustainability in mind and then take that back into our teaching and into our classrooms? Over the last 2 days, we had 3 inspiring impulse speakers with us. Angelika introduced them briefly. And they shared their wisdom and insight about those topics with us. What's continuing to be really inspiring there is that they're not explicitly from the fields of design, have a connection to it, but might not come from that discipline itself. And I think that's been really interesting and inspiring for all of us to get those impulses from outside. I see some of you nodding, right? We're wanting to integrate that in our work going forward, but I want to invite those of you who have just joined us today to share that inspiration. We will also share with you plans that the learning community has made to take that back into their classroom. To have a shared context for all of us, we're lucky to have 2 of our impulse speakers share a short version of what they demonstrated yesterday with us today. And so to begin with, I would like to invite Professor Nicole Pless to join us up here. Nicole is a co-founder of the Responsible Leadership Movement. Her research on responsible leadership, sustainability, and global governance has appeared in many leading journals and has received numerous awards. She's a chaired professor of management at the University of South Australia, an honorary professor at the University of Queensland, and serves as guardian to the board of the Globally Responsible Leadership Initiative. Nicole is listed by Stanford University among the top 2% scientists in the world. And she has substantial international experience in working with global Fortune 500 companies in Europe and the US. A true citizen of the world, a true leader of responsible leadership. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, Nicole.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much for this warm welcome and introduction. It's really nice. Now, what I try to do is to walk you through the presentation that I gave yesterday, and the challenge is to make it as short as possible. So it is about responsible leadership, and what we see is that this topic has risen over the past decades and received some prominence due to different reasons. Firstly, because of all the accidents that we learned about, corporate wrongdoing, etc., but also about pressure of different stakeholders that businesses and their leaders engage in doing good. So what we see is that there are different calls for responsible leadership, starting with the European Foundation for Management Development in 2005. Then it became a hot topic at the World Economic Forum in Davos. So you see here Klaus Schwab, who actually called for more responsibility in business and also in the public sphere. Now, when we talk about responsible leadership, we say it is not only about avoiding harm, right? Avoiding accidents, avoiding scandals, but also predominantly also about doing good. So creating positive value for society, creating public value, and contributing to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So meaning leaders are actually asked to use their power and influence to contribute to positive change. So when we talk about responsible leadership, we see a shift from this very narrow relationship between the leader and the direct report to create simply business objectives. What was usually missing in the traditional leadership research was this responsibility dimension. And so this is what we are bringing into the field by widening the scope of what leaders are responsible for and studying that. So leadership, as we understand it, is about mobilizing different stakeholders, be it employees within the organization, be it customers and clients, be it shareholders, be it the broader public, to engage in activities that help to create solutions to change the world for the better, right? It is about co-creation, it is about doing no harm, doing good, finding solutions, be it in terms of products, be it in terms of business innovation, supply chain innovation, or other design innovations, right? So it is about delivering on the triple bottom line, so people, planet, profit, and to respond to the needs of different stakeholders inside and outside the organization. So this is a very new landscape for many of the business leaders. There are many new competencies that they need to show in order to engage with different stakeholders. Now, the scope of leadership responsibility has broadened. However, there are different understandings of what responsible leadership means. And that is where our research started. So, cutting that very short, we did a study with top executives from different businesses in different countries and different industries. And that showed that there is a landscape of different understandings of responsible leadership, meaning different leaders have different understandings of whom they are responsible for. So the scope, some things it's very narrow, others saying it's very broad. Others have a very, very low degree of accountability. Others have a high one. So within this landscape, we identified four different prototypes: the idealist, the traditionalist, the instrumentalist, and the integrator. So currently, we see many businesses in this realm, in this landscape place. So we have, and I will go through that quickly, the traditionalist, that is whom we know as the one who's using business for profit. They are really trying to maximize profit, they try to create value for shareholders, and they engage in business if it is truly necessary. They follow the doctrine of Milton Friedman: the business of business is business, corporate social responsibility of business is to increase its profit. And so they are quite resistant when it comes to creating broader public or societal value, and would only do that if it's really necessary. When it comes then to innovation, they are not really trying to innovate for society, but they try to innovate if it's possible to enhance shareholder value. Therefore, when it comes to societal values, they have Me Too approach. So they would engage if they can increase or use a certain innovation that is already there, that has proved to be successful, like for instance microfinance, and then put it into their product portfolio. This is all very good, and they are all very much still in this landscape of responsible leadership because they pay taxes and provide jobs, and by doing so contribute to the environment. However, there is a certain risk because they are driven very much by self-interest. And this can shift from self-interest into greed, right? And that's the problem. Now, let me provide you with one example what this may mean and how this could look like. So we talked yesterday about the Ford Pinto case. You may have known that was a design flaw in the 70s, and so there were two sides. There were the business administrators and there were the designers, right? The designers said, well, we have a flaw here, and this can actually produce serious effects, which I show you here. So there is an accident and very low mileage, only 20 miles per hour. It exploded because the gas tank was positioned at the rear end of the car. And so the question was what to do. And there was a design solution. So designers knew this can be resolved by simply redesigning the gas tank. Now, what did management do? Management said, well, we calculate what that means. We do a cost-benefit analysis, right? We look into, sorry, that was wrong. We look into what are the costs when we add this particular device and redesign it, which is $11 per car, meaning with 12.5 million cars, we have cost of 137 million. But if we now let's do another calculation as well. We put a human value, a monetary value of the human being, and monetarize the damage. So they took some insurance numbers and came up with, okay, if we have calculate 180 deaths, 180 injuries, 2,100 million bird cars, multiply that, we have a cost of $49 million. Well, $49 million are less than actually introducing this additional gadget. And so the CEO decided we bring the car to the market without redesigning it. Now, over the decade, what was predicted happened. Many people died, many injuries, horrible, got into the media, bad reputation, and the Ford Pinto was actually faded out, right? So this means this is a decision where one would consciously accept that one does harm on human beings. So having said that, this actually falls out of the responsible leadership matrix. This is irresponsible, right? The traditional economists wouldn't do that. They would still say, we have to accept that we shouldn't harm people. So they also have principles there, therefore they sit in here. But there was a lot of learning around that, right? We need to have some values. It's important to respect the life of people. We need to respect that we have to ensure their dignity. So, while the traditionalist is a minimalist approach to responsible leadership, and they only engage if they can immediately show that this is profitable for shareholders, we see currently a move to the instrumentalist side. And the instrumentalist is very much sharing the same ideas like the traditionalists, so profit maximization, being effective, etc. But they say, well, we also have to take a broader look into what's happening in the external environment. And since more and more stakeholders actually want us to be more responsible, we need to act, we need to do something. And so what we see is that these instrumentalists have a broader stakeholder view, still low in their kind of responsibilities towards broader others, but they try to do something. And I will come to this image here where we have a market-driven design, where we see more and more companies taking it seriously to report on what they are doing in terms of sustainability. And Jeff Immelt, CEO of General Electric, was very active already at the beginning of the millennium, introduced a new car and a new renewable motor to different of their products, implemented them and had an eco-imagination campaign, thereby was already at the forefront of electric cars. And what we see here is they are quite actually more open, more proactive when it comes to innovation. So while the economist is here, more Me Too innovations, laggard, they try to be a little bit at the forefront there and try to bring something to the market where they can realize win-win situations and at the same time contribute to society and making a profit. Sorry, I have to click through that all the time. But this brings me to another one, and while they are still driven by the purpose of business is business, we see here a shift that says, well, the purpose of business is to contribute to society, to make a real profound change and to serve society. So we have here the integrator. The integrator is interesting because they have broad sense of accountability towards different stakeholders and also a high degree of responsibility. And they say we are driven by humanistic values. We really want to create change that is lasting, that has a positive impact, that is a second order solution that really helps to alleviate the problems, not only alleviate, but to cure the problems that we are currently facing. An example here are companies that are, for instance, using biodynamic approaches in order to actually produce in harmony with nature. They try to create products that are good for the well-being of people. You see here a different design principle. It is really designing with nature. It is designing with a systems view in mind. And this has also very profound implications how they understand the way they are doing business. So Ray Anderson, the founder and CEO of Interface, which is also a design-led floor manufacturer, says, for those who think business only exists to make a profit, I suggest to think it again. Business makes a profit to exist. So this is a very profound shift in mindset in management and in leadership, right? Where we all of a sudden have this humanistic side at the forefront. And we see that we have a new understanding of leadership styles. So the leader as change agent, the leader as servant to the needs of others, the leader as steward, stewarding the environment, the nature that we are in. Right? So quite a different approach. The leader as communicator, as storyteller, to engage with different stakeholders, to mobilize them, to together create social innovation, create solutions that have a positive effect on business and society. And what we see here is we often have these innovators. They are either really designing from scratch or are early adopters. So biodynamic approaches have been very new to the cosmetics industry, running in parallel to the traditional industry, but still being not the norm, not the mainstream. This is a second order solution that we saw here with the biodynamic approach. I like to share a final one, and that is the Idealist. The Idealist is very different. These are all for-profit organizations. Here we see the social enterprises, usually not having achieved self-sustainability yet, or having an idea and a purpose that is not purpose-driven. So they are very much driven by an idealistic mindset. Often they are altruist, doing business even if it incurs a loss. They may even invest their personal money into that, at least until they achieve self-sustainability. What we often see here is something, at least in my research, designing for dignity. So we see here that they try to create solutions for stakeholders in need, and do that because they are really passionate about them, they are really compassionate and caring for these stakeholders. Here you see a solution by Gramvikas, a social enterprise in India who bring water and sanitation systems to indigenous communities and help them to build their own water and sanitation programs, thereby allowing them to really develop second order solution, meaning access to clean drinking water instead of using simply a purifying sachet, right, that transforms polluted drinking water into clean one. Important in pandemics or in catastrophic situations, but not really, it's a remedy, no? A first order solution, not a true cure of a problem. And so what we see particularly among these idealists are really this true innovative approaches. You may also think about rare diseases where they engage in and try to find solutions. And particularly these are areas where either the public system fails or where corporations do not want to invest in yet, right? So they take a lot of courage and a lot of energy to do that. Now the question is, where and how can each mindset make the best contribution to achieve social change, right? I don't say that one is better as the other, but I say they have different contributions to make, right? So the traditionalist, well, when it's a Me Too, he has a lot of social impact, he has a lot of impact. If he takes microfinance into a portfolio, can mean a lot of credits for people who need that, right? They have a large scale. The instrumentalist also, they can actually have the scaling effect. The idealists, they really look into very new fields of innovation and are active there, engaged there, and perhaps this is leveraged later on by other businesses. And the integrator that try to really lead the way in terms of hybrid solutions. Though these most of the time are likely to develop first-order solutions, here we more see the second-order solution. The question that remains is, how can we bring them together so that they can work together and leverage their best effects? And that is where the relational side of leadership comes into place. Partnerships are important here, so the United Nations Goals number 17, to bring different groups, different actors, different power players, different industries, different sectors together to actually tackle the pressing problems of today and to create public and societal values to change the world for the better and for future generations. That was it in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Nicola, for sharing that wisdom with us. I think you've given us a new set of language, right? The framework language. We had vivid discussions about what that means for us, how we interpret that. So super interesting to start our day yesterday. I would like to invite two members of the learning community who discussed the findings. There you are. Great. And I'm also super curious to hear what you took away and what might happen next. If you'd briefly introduce yourselves also to those who haven't yet met you and share with us what stuck.
Okay, my name is Marco, and here is Maria, and we were both taking part in the group of the responsible leadership model by what we got introduced by Nicola. And our group was connecting to the group discussion we had after the input from yesterday. And we were thinking, like, how can we enable students thinking about leadership, and also what we got presented, like this taxonomy of leaders, followers, and results. So our question was, like, how can we bring this critical reflection on decision-making affecting the public value and sustainability in its roots to design education, but maybe to education in general, maybe except from management education. So the claim of our approach, which is like a playful approach, is exploring the responsible leadership landscape. And yesterday we also heard about the difference between saying and showing. So we didn't want the students to maybe say what kind of leadership they would like to achieve or to play. So we want them to maybe show on the kind of decisions they would like to take to gain results and really show and maybe navigate in this landscape. So by showing what kind of decision and define these different typologies of leadership, and depending on the maybe kind of level of bachelor's or master or semester, we thought about we need maybe a case study before doing this, maybe by showing like a documentary. We thought about things like movies about how to feed the world, to bring in like what kind of decisions are needed if you are a leader and if you are involved in business. So I hand over to Maria explaining our playful approach.
Thank you. Yeah, we developed a prototype or game that we called Lead or Lose. We're very proud of this title. And so basically we were all super excited about trying this out with students. It's kind of a role play. So we divide students into leaders and different stakeholders. So we thought about internal stakeholders, where we have the CFO, we have the traditional maker designer, we have shareholders, but we also have external stakeholders, suppliers, consumers, but maybe also children of 2041. So all of these roles come, of course, to add in a little fun with some requisites. So we thought about some glasses representing the designer role or different things that we can bring in. But also it comes with a set of needs and concerns. So we start off by introducing the problem scenario. We were very inspired by the Ford Pinto, but of course that can be adapted. It's just important that it's a scenario in which leaders have to make a really difficult decision that will impact all these different stakeholders. So basically, after researching that a little bit, the leaders have to pitch their approach to solve the problem, and they can be questioned by all the stakeholders, raising their concerns and their needs. And after this role play, all the stakeholders can choose which leaders they would want to follow. And then basically, to wrap it up all, we want to have a reflection moment in the end, where we then go back to the framework and analyze what actually happened, what kind of mindsets were hidden in these decisions and in these personas, and tie it all back together. So that was kind of our prototype that we hopefully try out soon.
What are the props? What are the props? What's for the glasses and the?
So to actually really take on the role of the designer, the CFO, the CEO, we wanted to create. We first thought about different hats, and then extended it to other requisites that people can.
So are these like the
yeah, I don't know what's the English word for those. Brace, sleeves.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this. And before we move on, I'm curious, Nicola, if you have questions or comments for what the group came up with, because you haven't seen it yet.
No, I think it's really a wonderful idea, and we already talked about it and thought that would be great to also actually apply it in different cultural contexts in order to see if there are different reactions in Sweden, Germany, and perhaps Australia.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fantastic. I think it's a great idea, and it really makes it very practical. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to now introduce you to Nina Marie Lister. Nina Marie is registered professional planner, trained in systems ecology, environmental science, and landscape planning. She's professor in the School of Urban and Regional Planning at Toronto Metropolitan University and a visiting professor of landscape architecture at Harvard University's Graduate School of Design. At Toronto Metropolitan University, she founded and directs the Ecological Design Lab, a collaborative incubator for ecological design research and practice. Her groundbreaking research, teaching, and practice centered on the relationship between a landscape infrastructure, biodiversity, and ecological processes, and it has been recognized with numerous awards. Her work has been shown at the Venice Architectural Biennale, and she's the author of numerous publications. Nina Marie, one of the things that's really stuck with me from your talk yesterday was that you shared that half of the species we share this planet with are predicted to disappear until a few years, 2030. And you then said that there is an intrinsic right for other species to exist. How do we design for a future where we respect and protect this intrinsic side?
Do I need this too? You want me to use two? Okay. Vielen Dank. Das war sehr schön. It's very generous. I'm so delighted to be here. I am going to talk about maybe a second or even a third order solution that I learned about. And I also learned that I regularly dance between an idealist and an integrator. And I think that's also because I have the great privilege of working principally in an academic context but also in a professional practice. And so for me, this is also an incredible learning opportunity. I want to address the biggest stakeholder in this conversation. We might think it's us, because we tend to think that we are the center of everything, but actually, it is the planet that sustains us. You've all heard the expression that there is no planet B. Well, that's the perspective on sustainability I would like to offer you in design education, that there's nowhere else for us to go. And even with our collective brilliance in design, we are here. And we are working with the biggest stakeholder of all, nature, the planet that supports us and all the living beings on it, of which we are just one species. We're very important, of course. So with that in mind, let's think about a second and third order solution that might not appear on its surface to have anything to do with the products you design or the services you design or the people with whom you work, who are, of course, many times in need and vulnerable if you're an idealist and you're a service provider. But there's something else that's important, and that's what this short talk and provocation was about. Co-creating and relating to the rest of the world through the act of design. And I want to start by saying, and I did so yesterday, exactly that nature, the wildlife, the plants, the animals, the beings that we don't see are actually big stakeholders because they in turn protect us. And on a planet where we are growing very quickly, particularly in our cities, our connections to nature are disappearing very quickly, and that makes it even harder for us to relate. So we, of course, as humans, have developed this wonderful capacity to be connected all across the planet in multiple ways, but this creates real problems for the other creatures among us. And I'm using some big-bodied examples that are easy to see here. So these kinds of images in our cities are becoming more common, where we are seeing the results of the ways in which we've cut up the planetary surface into little bits, mostly suitable for us. And we think this is an anomaly or something strange. And yet we have a hard time relating to these images of strange and weird juxtapositions. But they are becoming more increasingly common. And at the same time, ironically, we are becoming more distant from understanding our relationships with other beings. And yet the United Nations recognizes in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals and climate change that nature, more specifically called biodiversity, the abundance and distribution and diversity of life itself, biodiversity is the very best natural, pre-existing defense we have against climate change. And so that means that in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals that you might be working, nature, life on land, life below water, life itself is a stakeholder, and that's connected to all of the other Sustainable Development Goals. It's also connected to the services that nature provides for free to us. I know that the instrumentalists and the traditionalists have ways of evaluating the services, just like they did the value of human life against the redesign of a Ford Pinto gas tank. So we have conversations about this regularly, don't we? Those services, though, are part of the newest set of global frameworks around the protection of nature. The Global Biodiversity Framework for 2030 says we have to protect 30% of life on land and life below water to recover the services that nature provides for us. So that's one way to think about sustainability. In my lab, let me share some examples of how we do this, which I hope inspire you, and I hope in the workshop that you did, you will inspire me to think about this differently. We work across 3 pillars: connecting landscapes for the safe movement of people and wildlife, the design of green and blue infrastructures that are alive and worth investing in and that actually require design, and of course the concept of resilience that brings this together in the context of sustainability. But in layperson's terms, we connect people to nature in cities. That's what we do. There are more cities than ever, there are more people than ever living in cities, and we need connections to nature for our own health and wellness. So how do we do that? A number of publications that I do work specifically with designers to help inform that practice and in turn study it. More importantly for me still, there is a moral and ethical perspective based on how and where I live. Binagami is an indigenous Anishinaabe term that governs the territories and lands where I work and live, and this essentially means a shared responsibility. And that's what I offer to you. As citizens of the planet, we all have a shared responsibility to nature, to land, to life itself. And this governance is overseeing the work that we do. Essentially, we have a research-based practice, and we call it a praxis, the links between theory that we develop and the research empirical data that we study, and that allows us to scale up and across landscapes, specifically designed solutions to build better relations with land and life. So just a quick tour of some of the things we do. Hard maybe to connect to product design, but I'll show you the results of this in some of the design solutions. We do field work. We ask very basic questions about how and where wildlife move. Many different species. We've studied everything from birds to bats, and understanding how they move across landscapes. In this case, bird migration. We want to understand bird migration and movement so that we can understand how our built form, our architecture, and our city planning might engage with and support our shared responsibility to the birds around us. These can range from owls to bluebirds to songbirds to shorebirds, and we ask questions in design with those data. We use those data to say, well, how can we design buildings and landscapes that are bird safe? Birds can't see glass. They don't recognize glass as an object. They see it as transparent reflection of the sky. And when they migrate both from Africa through Europe or from South America to North America, twice a year we lose literally billions of birds. 1/3 of our songbirds have disappeared since 1970. 30%, approaching 40%, they're gone. So what is life without birdsong? What's the price of that? That's part of the conversation. These powerful images of loss can be recovered through beautiful design, through new ways of thinking about glass and the relationship to the street if you're an architect. So we've developed guidelines for bird-safe cities. We've done this for the city of Toronto, which is the first city in North America to make these regulatory. Europe has plenty of examples. We're building on these together to create new and innovative ways to develop materials that are bird-safe and architecture itself, as well as city planning strategies that provide safe movement for birds. Another example, large-bodied animals are easier to understand in a talk like this, so very quickly, we ask questions about how and where wildlife movements are affected by land use change. What does this do for creatures that have very large ranges across country borders, in and out of our cities, across parks? We've studied cheetahs together with the Cape Leopard Trust and Thanbona Wildlife Reserve, participating in their research. We collar and move animals. Our lab has a great number of participants and collaborators. This is not necessarily our work, but work in which we participate, so that we understand how to gather and use these data to inform design solutions that protect the movements of wildlife. Whether that's even you as a citizen or resident can provide data to eBird, Merlin, iNaturalist. These are multiple crowdsourced platforms now that are really well and truly available for designers to access. We use this work to say, well, how can we design landscape-based infrastructures that allow connected, safe passage, not just for wildlife, but also for people? Can we get multiple benefits for our own wellness and well-being through infrastructure design that does more than one thing? That's generally good design, to serve multiple clients. And we've done this together with scientists who provide excellent data. We research how and where wildlife move, and we've discovered some interesting things. For example, that wildlife bridges, specifically for large-bodied mammals that connect two sides of a roadway and prevent car crashes and the loss of human life, also result in learning for wildlife. They teach their young. This is not an accident that they cross. They know, they learn, and they understand how and where to move. And these studies allow us, in turn, to improve those designs together with very creative architects, road engineers, traffic engineers, structural engineers, landscape architects, botanists, all engaged in making these infrastructures work for us. They are living laboratories. They're not just pieces of concrete and steel and landscape, but they actually help solve major societal problems. So we're working together with communities across North America right now, recognizing that the number of roads on the planetary surface will increase upwards of 60% by 2050. That's a lot of roadway. So let's redesign the road. Let's make them look different. Let's help prevent this kind of roadside normality and change the way we relate to beings on the road. Doesn't mean we have to stop using transportation, but means that our transportation and our mobility will be different. Thinking differently here about connectivity. Not all road bridges look like this. This is one in Banff National Park. But you can see that these are images of reconnecting a landscape, not just a tunnel. When you look at this, do you see a tunnel, a bridge, or a new way of moving? For this guy, it's a new way of moving that's essential. In Hollywood, there are cougars now in Griffith Park. We welcome wildlife into our cities in strange and unusual ways, but we can also provide connectivity for beasts that need 5,000 square kilometers of territory, not just a tiny park where there's never a mate to be found. This bridge is the world's largest wildlife crossing. I shared an example of this project on which we're providing technical advice. Most importantly in this project was landscape design, together with a recognition that the landscape on either side was very important to not only to connect, but to redesign for people for the safe movement across the largest highway in California, in fact, the busiest highway in North America. Together, we're working with a group of partners to do this, who also helped to engage in our design studio. And very quickly, I'll just offer some inspiring images from students who, working together with the Wildlife Crossing Fund and some of our research partners, were able to rethink how movement happens in a busy state like California, not just for people, but through the lenses of other beings. So the workshop stimulus that I left you with yesterday was to ask you to think about what is it like to conceive of the world in which you have to navigate underwater, or perhaps in a tunnel. If your world is digging under the city fabric, what does that mean for design? What if you had to think like a wolf, where you're avoiding being recognized, but having to cross a road and to build new territory? Or what if you're a tiny golden newt? How does that affect your life when there's no water left, or when the water in the ponds are drying up? What can we do about that? Or what about the Mojave tarantula? What is it like to see the world through the 8 lenses of a spider? Or a desert tortoise in a solar field? Or a fish trying to get back to the ocean? Or the mule deer under a busy California roadway? Thinking about these structures through the lenses of other beings gives us new inspiration for design. It fundamentally changes our perspective. And that's what I wanted to leave you with, a way of thinking about sustainability with nature as the biggest stakeholder, and an opportunity to redesign, to rethink, and to reconnect in a way that we call more than human design. Think about human-centric design as a big shift in our thinking. The next shift in thinking for second-order solutions, maybe third-order solutions, is to design with a more than human approach, and to think about ourselves in concert with the natural world that actually sustains us, for us and for all our relations. Let's get connected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nina Marie, for this inspiring talk this morning. I would like to invite 2 members of this learning group, and we are curious to hear what stuck with you after learning about Nina Marie's impulse from yesterday, and which ideas did spark from that.
No? Okay. Yeah, maybe we start with an introduction. So my name is Manuel Stefan. I'm an industrial designer at Steelcase here in Munich.
My name is Klaus Hackel. I'm teaching product design in Bolzano.
So I think yesterday we had this kind of metric. I think that was just that you also heard right now. It's like billions of birds die every year crashing on glass facades, and I think there was quite a tension that we felt that even the spaces that we think that we design really well, that we think we actually do very good in, are actually having a very bad influence on other species. So I think what we did was kind of envisioning like what can be a goal for education to even consider design from even more perspectives than we already do today. So as we just heard, from the lens or through the lens of different animals, such as deer, such as bees, such as fish, such as birds, for example.
However, of course, to make the case for these creatures, we have to orchestrate a bit more and extend the expertise we need in our teams when we design something for others, for other creatures. And for this reason, we imagined a case study which deals with how to implement the ideas we heard in this Impulse lecture yesterday. And we took a specific case, which is building a house on the countryside where we're confronted with exactly these issues, moving animals on pathways. And we imagined this case study, as I said, from architectural fields in which we consider as designers how to deal with our expertise. And our expertise, of course, is deducting experience from specific examples and generalize that. And this requires us, of course, to invent modules, a modular approach to, for instance, these kind of building types, putting them or elevating a building on a base which allows to animals to freely move beyond, and that gave us different kinds of inputs in thinking about our roles.
So there has been a lot of discussions what actually design brings to the table. So this was really interesting, even though we had like a lot of designers on the table. Like there has been quite a divergence of opinion what like really the key role of design is. And I think kind of what we also agreed on was like that we want to bring like a lot of stakeholders into kind of like this topic, and then they set kind of the playground and the designers play. So we shift also the focus from only the perspective of humans to like, or from form follows function to form follows environments, and having more of a planet-centered perspective, I would say. And one thing I'm missing, I believe. But I
think this was roughly it.
Yeah.
We think as a wrap up, I think we have to extend our profession to other animals, to other creatures on the planet, and one of our expertise for sure is to concretize, to make real, to make tangible abstract ideas. So these are, in my opinion, at the core of our profession. This was
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nina Marie, anything you would like to ask or you would like to add?
Well, I hope this is the beginning of a longer conversation, but I really congratulate you for providing a tangible example. And the two presenters, I don't think you're architects, no?
No, we're designers.
Exactly. So you've been able already to find one tangible built example where you might think how to apply this, and that's fantastic. What I take away from your takeaway is planet-centered perspective and form follows environment. Thank you. Amazing.
Thank you so much for that. Last but not least, Professor Dr. Wilhelm Vossenkuhl unfortunately cannot be with us today, but René and I are going to do our best to introduce him and share a little bit of an overview of the wisdom that he brought into the room yesterday. So you might have heard his name. He has published many books on ethics, on philosophy. He published on Ockham, on Kant, on Wittgenstein, on the philosophy of language and on ethics. He recently published Ethik und ihre Grenzen, a very interesting book from 2021. And the international design community might be familiar with his publications because in the 1980s he cooperated with Otto Eicher on a number of projects. 2 years ago he edited, together with Winfried Nerdinger, Otto Eicher, Design, Type and Thinking, celebrating Eicher's 100th birthday. He's a professor emeritus of philosophy at Ludwig Maximilians University.
Wilhelm Vossenkuhl shared insights on value-based leadership. He asked, why should design education take care of value-based leadership? And he gave the answer. Because designers should understand their role within a bigger whole. And they should understand the self in a wider context. His observation is that designers are often trained technically without understanding that role. He argued, that they need to be trained as citizens and political entities. And this role has to be taught in design education. Wilhelm Vossenkuhl introduced various theories of value that students could learn about. And he ended by asking, what does sustainability mean? What exactly should be sustainable? And he engaged us in critical conversations about the pros and cons of sustainability with the examples of windmills and hydropower stations. They might be considered to be sustainable, and at the same time, they are criticized as destroying the landscape or harming fish populations. I would like now invite two members of the learning community to come join me up here. Thank you. And we are curious to hear what stuck with you after learning from Willy, and what ideas did spark for you to take forward. Come to the light, into the light. Yes.
Yeah, hello. So this is Dylan and I am Susan, and we were having a small workshop about Mr. Vossenkuhl's speech, which was very inspiring. He's a philosopher, and I think the philosophy gives us great tools for thinking better. And this was happening with Willy, so he gave us a couple of tools, very nicely sorted out, so we could go on with this. So these tools sometimes were good for taking apart a problem or a way of thinking. So like the word intelligence says intellegere, also taking apart, and then with these part problems, we might see clearer what is the reason, where do we want to go, what is the purpose, and so on. So we have a very nice example for you. And but the short thing I really was impressed by was he was talking about the values, and I was thinking a lot about values, and we talk about values, and he said values often are linked to ideology. So this was interesting to hear that it's maybe linked to a certain mindset, and instead of values, something, I don't know, above us all. So, and he gave us a tool to make a difference. So if a value is, it's ideological if I just talk about and don't live this value, but value gets a fact and a cause and a reality when I act responsible in this value. I make it happen. It shows instead of saying. So this was his words, Wittgenstein words. So another very, very nice tool he explained to us, and we tried to make it very easy to understand with a very concrete example, and Dylan will show it too.
Hey, yes. He introduced the ideas and he gave us a question, and we had to look into pros and cons. And we made a learning machine out of it. We had a lot of fun in our group. And we called it first the Denk machine, and now we called it the learning machine. So it's about taking a problem and looking at it as a development process and learning on the way, trying things and finding out what could be the sustainable solution. And the example we yesterday tried to go through was to think about smartphones and to question, should a smartphone be sustainable? What does it mean to be sustainable for a smartphone? And why should it be sustainable? We tried to discuss that first in our group. And then we came up with the pros and cons of the smartphones as they are right now, as we use them. And we came up with this pros and cons. So
So the addiction is it's a bad, like a bad. It's a con.
yeah,
The material we don't know until now. It's maybe still a con, but it could be a pro. The equal access, of course, is a pro. It's good for successful migration. Intimacy, privacy for many people is a pro, because I can keep intimate contact with my people and take my notes and all this.
but it can be also,
It can be also negative if you say, okay, data problems. So the human touch is something we missed. Too much smartphone, less human touch. So, and last but not least, the joy of taking photographs and sending them around the world. So it's a great joy also. So, yeah.
yes. So, and then today we asked ourselves, how can we make a tool out of it? So in classes or everywhere we work, to use this Denk machine or learning machine. Yeah, I'm coming to that. To use it in a very practical way. That's where the designers helped us, the ones who are not so. I am not a designer per se, not a thing designer. So they helped us to come up with this idea of making a spectrum, because it's not black and white, but rather you have to ask yourself in the process, where are we right now and where do you want to be? Addiction is quite clear, we don't want to be addicted, it's a con. Materials, it is quite unsustainable right now. It could be sustainable, and how can we go there? Equal access is cool, joy is there, but also there are problems. But with this tool, it becomes easier to talk about it and to identify what we could do regarding the points. And what Willy said yesterday was a very important question. What is the price I am ready to pay for these things we are creating, for the arguments we are having? And we, in our short discussion, we just came up with the price we are okay to pay for a smartphone using in daily life is we are okay to spend our time on it and to give it attention, but not okay with the addiction or the not sustainable materials. And that should be a discussion, and the question helps us to really ask what are the prices we are ready to pay and what are not the prices we are ready to pay, and what can we do with that.
Yeah, so I think what really helps us, this little machine, is to think in a very general thing. What do we want and why do we want it? And then the price, what is to do? How do we have to give for it, and what do we gain? So coming from a vision to a reality. And the philosophy can help us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So I just call Willy and ask him if he has something to add. We would be curious about it.
What I think is amazing about what you've developed here is that I think this also can be a really useful tool to discuss and develop a design brief, right? If we think about what are the dimensions, and then we think about what can we change with design, right? That kind of brings us back to the Ford Pinto example also, and like, well, what are dimensions that we can redesign, and what is it worth, and what are we paying? So putting that into practice like that, I'm definitely going to use that. So I have a million more ideas. Thank you so much for the inspiration that you shared, Nina Marie and Nicola, and also Willy in absence. And also thank you so much for everyone here in the learning community. It really is that participation. And honestly, it blows my mind what you just made out of this in the last 25 minutes. I mean, it's really incredible to see. And to me, those are those sparks that I hope you're going to take with you. Right? We're doing all this so that it leaves this room. That's the point of it. So I do just want to express my gratitude, our gratitude for you all being part of this. We can only do this together, right? I thank you for your time, probably the most valuable thing that you can share, and for the energy that you brought to this room. I'm excited to hear what you will do next. I would like to encourage all of you to please stay in touch with us and let us know. We've heard from some of you of what you're thinking, where you're going to take that. We want to know, right? So please do send us photos, send us notes, follow up when we do, so that we can track where the inspiration is making its way into the world.
Yes, I would like to continue by thanking the gracious host who had to leave, but still this space that we have is an enormous factor, an important element in this group dynamic. So it's our third teacher, as we call it. And this is fantastic that we can work here. And last but not least, I must thank, and I love to thank, to the team behind the scenes that makes all of this run so smoothly. First and foremost, Stephen Stannard. Thank you, Stephen. Stephen prepared and designed all the materials. Thank you to Hannes and Bastian, live recording. To Aaron, taking photos each and every time. Thank you so much. And the Showtech team again for all the stage building and the sound. Thank you so much. To that end, I would love to invite you for a few more days. We still have our survey on the question, what is the public value of design study programs, of design education in Germany? For the second time we do it, and we want to learn from it, of course. And as a thank you, there is 5,000 euro. This amount of money is for the design school with most participants in this survey, so please be part of it. Share your impressions about the public value of design studies. I want you to invite to visit our website, because already some of what we have done in the last 1.5 years has been published there. It will be more and more and more, this growing content. So you can see already a lot of videos from the impulses there. And if you are curious about learning sciences, personal growth, artificial intelligence, you will find first impulses there. Furthermore will come. And luckily the series will continue. Our next event is in October on innovation and in March on creativity. We would love to see many of you here, and now enjoy some more conversation. Thank you again for being here. Have a good day.